Hello, and welcome to a Bon Mott's production of
MOTSterpiece Theatre,
where we review critically acclaimed cinema spanning the breadth of human filmmaking.
MOTSterpiece Theatre,
Spoilers, mature content, inappropriate language. Join us.
MOTSterpiece Theatre. MOTSterpiece Theatre.
Bon Mott's?
MOTSterpiece Theatre.
MOTSterpiece Theatre, sorry.
A subsection of Bon Mott's.
MOTSterpiece Theatre, where we're reviewing one of the AFI 100 movies, The Apartment. And I am Rich Perry. I'm joined by Jonathan E. Manzer.
Some like it hot. I prefer The Apartment.
Stephen Hermosi.
I can't beat that. Welcome.
Scott Thurler.
Hello there.
And I think Steve-O is going to start us off with the intro, body, and conclusion for this movie.
I'm going to pass it. Hold on. I'm going to pass it to Scott first.
Oh, yes. The funny
For the
log
tag.
line.
So in correct edition, I came up with everyone comes to Jack Lemons, or just lemons, and comes in all senses and contexts of that phrase.
This will be made clear by the end of this description.
And you'll see why.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's the first part of the intro body conclusion, is that everybody just goes and screws at Jack Lemon's apartment. CC Baxter is his name, and letting people have sex at his apartment is his game. So, so that's the original context of this movie. He is just kind of gets walked over by people that work with him because he's trying to move up in the company. He falls in love with an elevator girl whose name escapes me at the moment. What's her name? Fran. Fran
Kubelik.
I wanted to say Jane. It was Fran.
Nope.
I apologize to Fran Kubelik. I'm sorry.
I don't think she's worried
To
about
the fictional character. Go on.
So he kind of falls in love with this elevator girl that is working the elevator there. It turns out that she has been having an affair with his boss, one of the higher ups in the company.
The big boss.
Throughout, a lot of things happen which will be described, I think, throughout the conversation of this intro body conclusion. Suffice to say that this leaves Jack Lemon's character feeling a little bit cast aside. At some point, the two of them, his boss and Fran, end up at his apartment through a twist of fate that was pretty obvious if you think about it. Mm-hmm. But still a really great turn in the movie. They have a little, I guess, lover's tryst, we'll call it.
Sure.
An argument.
Yeah. A little ring-a-ding-ding, as they said in the movie.
No, the ring-a-ding-ding, I think, is the happy part. But they get into an argument, and she tries to kill herself. Jack Lemmon nurses her back to health. And she thinks that she's still in love with the boss, but as it turns out, Jack Lemmon and Fran, CC and Fran are perfect for each other. And however, well, you're right. You're right to give me the shaky hand. They're not exactly perfect for each other, but it seems that they are into each other.
They're the best match within the movie.
I'll say.
I think, I don't want to get into speculation on people's motives, but it seems to me that their end romance isn't necessarily born from devotion to one another.
True. He's tired of being lonely and she's tired of dealing with assholes.
It's desperation on both our parts.
And it's also a great middle finger to the guy who just left her.
I would agree with that to an extent. I think that they both like each other throughout the movie, though. And it's not exactly that he's tired of being lonely. I think that he actually has been nursing this like crush on her for a very long time.
Sure.
And I think that she's liked him the entire time as well. It seems like.
I should say he was the only decent person in the
right. Exactly, and yeah, it is kind of born of her being sick and tired of being treated like a piece of shit by his boss. But regardless, they kind of end up together at the end of the movie. Who the hell knows what's actually going to happen?
They're going to play gin rummy. Like,
yeah,
that's what we know is going to happen.
Like, and if anything is based on the actual, relationships of Hollywood actors in the 50s and 60s, they'll be broken up in 2 or 3 years. But regardless of that. The movie ends on a kind of a high note, but it's an earned, and I think you'll all agree with this. I think this movie does a very good job of earning its high note.
Sure.
And it's kind of a dark movie,
absolutely,
which is what I really like about it. And I'm gonna turn it over to everybody else right now to talk about that.
I want to establish the protagonist's role in the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So, Cece, Baxter?
Yep.
He's the best person morally in this film. And he's
not even that
a great person. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all relative, yeah, of course.
He has a quid pro quo relationship with his superiors of giving up his apartment as a sex pad in order for him to advance in the company. And he is a good company man for the majority of the film until... what's interesting is at the very end, both Shirley MacLaine's character, Fran, and Jack Lemmon's character, Cece, both get what they want. He gets the high-up position, the executive office. She gets to be with the man of her dreams. They both discover that they're miserable.
And they give it up.
Yes.
Yeah, for each other. That sounds weak, more or less.
I wouldn't say necessarily for each other. I think that they're actually individual...
they definitely did it for a moral reason more so than anything else.
Yeah, and sort of end up with each other, you're right, as part of the deal, if you will.
But these are the two moral... The two, is its best, and I put that in quotes, characters in here are morally ambiguous, and most of the other characters are very selfish and myopic people. And it's fascinating, because this is the follow-up to Some Like It Hot. I wasn't a big fan of Some Like It Hot, even though I understand its importance. This one, like, it
speaks to you.
It gripped me because it was such a real story. How people would actually act in these situations. You would think that this story was not. I mean, of course, it has the film like style to it, but it just feels very like real people making real decisions about. And yeah, and I have to give that narrative very high credit.
No, I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna speak in broad strokes. I'm gonna give you my score, which is gonna be 3 throughout the narrative, because as we were watching it, we were like more and more enthralled with it, and we're pleasantly surprised at the way it subverted like the tropes you thought were going to be, especially given that it was made in 1960. And yeah, and as you said, it was a follow-up. The same director, his name escapes me, but it was his follow-up.
Billy Wilder.
Yeah, it was Billy Wilder's follow-up to Some Like It Hot, which, again, check out our episode of that. We were not the biggest fans of that movie in general, but this one, like, I may speak about this in style, but I'll just mention here that it felt like a really good stage play at certain times and for parts of it. But yeah, the narrative was perfectly paced, I'll say, throughout. And again, like the path it took for the characters to get where they went to, and like the things how they intersected with each other, I thought was like perfectly scripted and of course acted as well. But yeah, so I'm going to give it a very strong 3 for the narrative itself, because it subverted my expectations a little bit. And I was not familiar, to be fair, like in all disclosure, I wasn't very familiar with the apartment at all.
Neither was I.
Even though it's number 80 on the list. So yeah, it's a little further down, sure. But nevertheless, I was pleasantly surprised and very entertained and enthralled in the sense of how it went through its pretty, I guess not complex plot, but just people problems, relationship problems that juggle a lot of characters that were all believable, and we'll get into that. So there's many other factors that added to this, but all I'm saying is like I thought the narrative perfectly was what it needed to be throughout, and I was never saying, oh, they need to speed it's slowing down or it's going too fast. It's perfect, the perfect amount of time, and everything happened the way I was satisfied with. Narrative closure was achieved, and like you said, Steve-O, it was earned. The ending that we saw that the film had was earned throughout, like the struggles of all the characters. So I can't say much else. I'm going to give it a very strong score.
Yeah. So I guess just to add a little bit more on to what I was saying earlier, I think that I feel like a lot of times, since we've combined intro, body, conclusion, we skip over what makes intro, body, conclusion.
Well, we do that.
I mean, we did that
for quite a while.
We did that purposely, for sure. But like, as long as we're still calling it intro, body, conclusion, I suppose, until we start calling it something different. I guess it still makes me think of what
cutoff points might be.
What not even necessarily cutoff points, but like what makes each of those worth a point, right?
Sure.
So like the intro starts off with Jack Lemmon talking about just statistics and like as an insurance man, very like by the numbers, and like I really like that. Like it grabbed me, and the body throughout, like, you know, after the intro ended, and I don't even necessarily need to say like a specific point, but like throughout the body, it continued what we had seen in the intro.
It followed through, I guess we'll say.
But you could see Jack Lemmon's character, Cece, changing throughout. And then in the end, when he actually stood up to his boss and said, I'm done with this, you saw the completion of his character arc. And I think that this movie was really about his character arc. But on top of that, there was an interesting character arc of, I want to call it like the women of this movie as a whole.
The female side of the relationships.
Yeah, because it's you know, solidified, and it's drawn to a point in Fran. Fran?
Yes.
Yep.
Jesus.
Correct.
I don't know why that's throwing me for a loop.
It is Fran.
It's drawn to a point in Fran, but like it's kind of shown through every single female character in this movie.
The secretary has a major twist.
Yeah. Facades of it, or not facades, facets
Indeed,
of it.
and like and everybody every woman that gets brought up to the apartment actually has her own kind of mini character arc and her own kind of like you know, they all have their own character to them, and they all have their own
reasons to be
little slight character arc that starts off with like, oh, I'm here like as a little bit of fun, like I'm here with my, you know, whoever, a guy that I want to come up here with, and they mostly they turn sour by the end of the time that they're leaving there, a lot of times, and I think that's really interesting to note. I'm going to give it a very strong 3 as well. And I don't want to talk too much more about that in this section because I think we've gone on long enough, but I just wanted to mention that little you know, that every female character has a tiny character arc, and that all of them together I think have one big character arc that goes on throughout this movie.
Yeah, I was going to address that very thing soon enough, but I'm giving it a 3 for intro to conclusion pretty strongly.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that. 3.
3.
All right, very nice.
All right, Scott, you're up with the big one, themes.
All right, here it is. Yeah, so I'll try to like leave enough time so we can all speak about it and not like again take up the whole episode. But yeah, because it's like so encompassing, and I think we all were like, again, if not pleasantly surprised, just outright surprised and respect. Like we saluted the film for being like, damn, they're addressing a lot of like in things that like we didn't think were going to be addressed in a film from this era in such a way. And that are still completely relevant. So, like, the womanizing aspect, just relationships in general, I guess, broadly, and maybe that ties into antagonists, perhaps. But just, like, how messy life is and how relationships between various people and love triangles and love squares, if you will, like like a fucking Glenn Beck board of like he and she are dating, and then like there's affairs with this and this and that one, and this guy's married, and my boss is like all this stuff, corporate life, even perhaps like trying to get ahead, you know, like and doing what you can, like, and I guess running like sort of an under the like not quite brothel, but might as well be like as the framework for trying to promote yourself in a corporate slave job, if you will. So like, man, like all that stuff was greatly addressed, and as you said, Steve alluded to, all like the character interactions, like what they represent, like how they interacted and reacted to the situations that they were faced with, and how they tried to deal with it, you know, the repercussions of it, having an affair with your older married boss, and being in crush / in love with / infatuated with a female coworker at work who you know is entangled with some other your boss and her secretary, like all this stuff, man. So it was all super well addressed, and just again surprising in a sense that a film of this nature had all that stuff and was so mature and intelligent about addressing it without watering it down, without making it seem like, oh, like sort of the plastic like tinsel tree life of other films perhaps from the era.
And they showed multiple sides of each of the stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Which surprised the hell out of me.
Yeah, like so many characters had so many facets to them and represented so many various angles of this theme, like the sexism even like of the era. And you can see it, of course, even today, like especially today in like what's happening in the culture and the climate of Hollywood, and just corporate and male versus in quotes female like roles in the workplace and elsewhere as well.
Oh, you just stole my entire thunder with that last one.
Go on. I'll let you go on with that one.
This is a very timely movie to watch, considering the like what is #MeToo and other things that are coming up in modern day society.
Absolutely.
And what I thought was interesting about this movie was it takes a look at the repercussions of sexual harassment, and that you don't necessarily like think about, like the just the toxic like mental destruction that happens with it, not just like the physical accosting and things like that, of like
the emotional and mental
the
toll.
Emotional toll, that it runs upon a person being involved with this, and that a person in power abusing, and like this is as the secretary points out. Oh, you think to Fran? Oh, you think you're special in a way? Like I was a plaything of his before this.
I was exactly where you were. Yeah.
And eventually, the secretary actually takes the biggest stand by calling his wife,
Miss Olsen. She takes her own initiative and decides to like sort of blow the whistle, if you will.
And there's an initial introduction to that in the elevator when people are getting off the elevator, and Fran gets slapped on the ass.
Yeah,
like and like it just seems very like to me. I don't know how this would have been. I don't know how this scene would have been looked at the time that it came out.
Sure,
right? Like maybe it's just as like a normal thing, but like seeing it now, when she gets slapped in the ass, somebody coming off the elevator, and then she talks back to him. I forget what she says exactly.
She says, "One day I'm going to close this door on your hand."
Yeah. Like she just basically tells him, "Fuck you," pretty much. And I think that's a very strange thing at the time, but seeing it in the
modern light,
through the goggles of like now, it's a very prescient way to talk about what is happening now, and like or the way that this is coming out now, that this has always happened.
See, I'm going to say that it was done for the illusion of humor. It's played off as like no big deal type thing, and kind of establishing her as what she deals with. But then over the course of the movie, it's no longer played for laughs.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And she tries to kill herself over something similar, or not something similar.
And I think
but like,
that's the point of having a scene like that, as you're like, maybe it's initially to get like a chuckle or something like that.
Oh, it's all lighthearted stuff. But
this is what you think is a lighthearted chuckle.
But you see the toll it takes. Of course. So
it is.
I'm going to close off. I'm absolutely giving themes like the hardest of all ones. it's something we said about the thing that comes to mind is when we talking about network and review that. Like, it's even perhaps more pertinent now than you think it would have been, like 40, 50 years removed from when it was made. So that's the best praise I can give to it. And I think it still stands. And
70.
Yeah, and again, is even you can get more out of it, as much out of it as perhaps it was saying at the time, and you can still see being applied to the culture and societal climate today. So
yeah, I agree. I'm going to give Themes a strong 1.
You can give it a 1 as well. This is 1s all around?
I think so, yeah.
That'll bring me to antagonist. So I had a lot of problem with this, specifically because I don't think Sheldrake himself is the main antagonist of this. I'm going to go with the culture of the time.
Exactly, sir. Like,
because I know you're gearing up, but hear me out.
I'm with you, Rich.
So, like, Sheldrake, by the time they introduced Sheldrake and what was going on with him and Fran, it was almost like it was very close to like almost an afterthought, because you had already been introduced to 4 previous people.
He's just another one
doing the exact same thing.
Exactly,
like he came in late to the party. He's just like, hey, like I want in on this apartment gig.
But he was already doing that for a while.
True. He was doing it himself. He didn't realize
he was the OG, like skipping on his wife.
He was a loner at first, but then as soon as he found out how great the apartment was working and how long it's been kept a secret, it's like, man, I need to get in on this.
He's like, I want it, and I'm the big boss, so you're going to give me the apartment now. Yeah,
apparently.
Yeah,
and he just like took over the game, and that set like his entire ambition to become, well, not even ambition, I would say, because I kind of think that I feel, at least according to his character, I wouldn't say tricked, but he was led into this position by somebody just like, hey, I could help you out, like maybe helped him with something small. And he's like, oh, yeah, that worked out for me. And then like somebody else came along and was like, hey, I could give you this. Like, oh, yeah.
It was a slippery slope.
And I think that story that he tells about
the guy changing in his apartment?
Yes, for the business meeting, or was the business meeting or the ball?
A gala or some shit.
And then it grew, snowballed.
He kept trying to get out. They kept bringing him back in.
Exactly. So I think like, I know it was a fake story that he told, but I think the real meat of the story, the basic of the story is like, one guy did it, I couldn't turn the other guy down, and then it became a thing, and then I can't really get my way out of it. I'm just kind of hoping for the best.
Yep. No,
like
it's almost like a Joker origin story, in that
multiple choice,
and then there's a kernel of truth in there, but like,
well, yeah,
he makes it like his own.
Yeah, if you look at it, there's a kernel of truth into every single story he tells.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
No, I agree. So, like,
he has to justify a lot to himself.
No, yeah.
So
himself.
There's a lot of people that have to justify a lot of things.
But I agree. Like, I got that same thing out of it. So I'm going to go with and like, I know Steve and I are going to possibly get into it, but I'll let you follow me up. But I'm going to build off what Rich said. It's the white, stuffy, like older white male abuse of power, specifically applied to abuse. Like, sexual predators, essentially, right? Like in corporations, or like in, again, higher positions of power, more or less, right? So as represented, yes, by Sheldrake or whatever his name is.
I think it's Sheldrake. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, he represents that, but at the same time, he was like the 5th person that was introduced that was abusing this structure, abusing this little like system that was set up. Yeah, perhaps accidentally by Baxter. Like, it's innocuous. Like, this guy, like, something happened, and one person used my apartment, and maybe he used it to, bring his mistress to, or this gal on the side, if you will. And then it snowballed. Like, well, I let one guy do it. I can't do like my coworkers. I can't play favorites, and he became trapped in his own like system, and maybe tried to use that to advance himself, which perhaps is a problem unto itself.
That's a whole conversation.
There's a lot that goes into the Baxter character.
There is.
Where, again, it goes into the justification, self-perception, what you want to be, what you think you want to be versus
world transitions.
He would I think he wishes he was the playmate that everyone thought he was. He has to keep up the lie that he is this like boozing ladies.
That's what I liked about him, is that every time he told a lie to basically protect the people that were going into the apartment, he got a little bit out of it. I mean, it kept it kept his neighbors from looking at him as like some loner loser.
Yeah, it was both self-serving, but also like a little despicable at the same time, in a sense.
But to get back to the thing, I'm going to hop ahead to protagonist for a second, because I believe that Fran is also a protagonist in the story.
I would agree.
And if you look, her antagonist is certainly the boss.
Yeah.
And
Sheldon.
Yes. And I would also say that Baxter, you're right about the kind of more abstract corporate culture angle to it, but I think that it eventually, like, in a sense, in a way, a business is set, its tone is set by its, like, leader. And its leader is a womanizing
SOB
who promotes people like him, the rotten apples that he raises to the top, and
a theme talked about in this movie. Like,
who played the game.
So he's certainly the abstract thing is true, but he's the personification of it all.
Right. That's all. That's kind of all I was getting at. So, like, I'll let you.
Let me jump in here.
Yeah.
So, as you may all know, if you have listened to any episodes of this podcast,
never have.
I assume you've never listened to a single episode. I tend to promote the concrete antagonist over the abstract antagonist, whereas Scott, perhaps, is the champion of the abstract. And I would like to push Sheldrick as the antagonist of this movie.
And I don't disagree.
And to be honest, in the last bunch of episodes, which is another reason I'm chopping at the bit to get into the concrete antagonist, I have agreed with you. In the last bunch of episodes, it hasn't been like a concrete antagonist that I could sink my teeth into. So I'm gonna go all in on this one. Sheldrick is a real piece of shit, and he just embodies everything that is wrong in this movie, right? Like, the idea is that the apartment, the movie, is kind of demonizing these womanizing cheaters who are skipping out on their wives, and he is the top tier of that. There are four other guys.
So he's the final boss?
Yeah, exactly. There are four mini bosses.
I never got an analogy for you when you're done, but
there are four other guys that are like doing this that have started off, but like this guy is the guy that really fucks his shit up. Cece's shit up. That is. And I think that not only does he do that, but he is ruinous to Fran to the point that she tries to kill herself. He is the embodiment of everything that is wrong in this movie. And I think that he's a really good antagonist in that way, in that sense.
Because of that, yeah.
Because not only does he, like, strangely antagonize Cece in a, like,
roundabout way.
In, like, a sidelong way. But he directly antagonizes Fran, the other protagonist, if we're going to combine here, per se, which I think is not a bad idea to combine these two.
It's a good idea.
I'm agreeing with that idea.
I think that Cece does, and if we're doing that, I'm going to just transfer into that, and maybe we can make this a whole conversation between both of these. I think that Cece, Jack Lemmon, does a terrific job being the antagonized, like, quote-unquote nice guy, who is not really a nice guy throughout, but I think kind of realizes it most of the way through the movie. And
I think the Jewish doctor helps that.
Exactly. The guy that's judging him the entire time, the Jewish doctor, a supporting character. Which let's not combine all three. We'll do supporting separately.
Sure.
But you know, Cece.
Dr. Justice is getting a 1.
Absolutely. Yeah. If for no one else. But Cece realizes most of the way through this that he's kind of like shitty, and tries to reconcile that with like his own
ambition.
bullshit. Like his own love of Fran and his ambition at the job. He tries to reconcile the two of them together. And it kind of works out at the end. It's sloppy and it's messy, which I think all good movies should be, to be honest. I think that anything really super neat and clean is bullshit, because that's not the way that life really works.
Anything other than that ending would not have worked.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it all works out pretty well, but I have to give his boss a 1 as a good antagonist who's just a piece of shit to both of them. And I have to give CC and Fran a 1 as protagonists.
Sure.
So I just quickly, the boss is actually a classical antagonist archetype of a tempter. He offers both Fran and CC exactly what they want, which are just lies. So again, he comes across as, in a sense, benevolent to CC to a certain extent, but it's always the poisoned apple.
Sure.
But hold on, but it's more malevolent than that, because it's not necessarily feeding CC lies. He gives him the office. He gives him what he wants.
Promotion, but it's always
he's telling him the truth. Yeah. He's saying, "I'm going to give you this
Those
promotion."
are the best kind of lies, though. The ones that are.
What is the lie that he tells him? He doesn't tell him any lies. He just refuses to tell him that in order to get what he wants, he's going to have to sell part of himself.
He lies that CC has more value than his apartment does. And this goes into another point in that the apartment is such a great metaphor for CC's existence, of it being it looks classy, it's in New York, but it's vacuous and empty and filled with
but he had a remote
that are in CC.
So with hedonistic elements.
Yes.
Yeah,
but he had a remote. He could change the channel from his couch, which I could not do when I was a child. Well, 35 years later.
Sorry you couldn't do that. But I just wanted to, I'm going to finish off with this. That like you said, Steve-O, we sort of been wavering, bouncing back and forth, at least in recent reviews, of corporeal and abstract antagonists. So I'll phrase it this way. Sheldrake is sort of like him and the other lower managers that are using the apartment, using CC to further their own tryst, if you will, or like a Voltron of of sexual predators. More or less.
And I'll form the head.
Yeah. And Seldrick forms the head. Right?
Jesus Christ.
I've been waiting to say that, sort of. So in that sense, I'm just saying we can agree that as represented by that metaphor / analogy, it's both.
All right.
They are the physical, embodiment of that. And Sheldrick especially, again, he's the top of again, the evil corporation of that, of the little cadre of doing that. But what they but their actions, again, what they represent and culturally, and again, then and now still, are of course completely antagonistic. So it's both. So I'm going to agree with me and with you in that sense, and give them a strong 1 on both fronts, because you can get both aspects out of it, of the way the movie portrayed them.
On both fronts, antagonists and protagonists?
No.
All antagonists.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us about protagonists. We combined.
Okay. Well, then
I've already given myself 2 1s.
Yeah, I'm giving them both 1s, of course, if you want to hear my scores outright.
Sure.
And I don't have much more to add, because you sort of flesh it out. See Jack Lemmon as CC, you can see his sort of conflict within himself. Like you said, or we said he was the most moral person relative to the rest of the characters, but that isn't saying all that much, but it's saying enough that he's at the heart.
It's a low bar to clear.
Exactly, Rich. At the end of the day, he's a good enough guy, sure, but he's also trying to get ahead in the way he knows, and is able and has a unique position in order to do so, and is being exploited by his higher ups essentially. But yet he's sort of complicit within the system as well, for sure.
There's a moment he almost becomes them.
Yeah.
When he brings the woman back on New Year's Eve.
Yes.
Exactly. At his lowest point.
That is him
You're right.
rejecting being joining.
You're right. That's his hero's journey. That's sort of his road of trials, if you will. But for sure, though,
he's on the road of trials.
I absolutely agree. That's.
I mean, if he continued that with what was going on in his apartment, he would have been a bigger antagonist than Sheldrake or any of the other guys.
Well, good Obviously, because that would have been the worst move. That's the problem. I guess that's the only problem that I have, is that he had no choice but to be the better man in that situation. Because, listen, what are you gonna do? Have sex with her on top of the passed out woman in your bed? Like, impossible.
Or just use the couch.
You have to be a good person.
There's always a way, Steve-O. The point is, like, of course,
if he didn't find her gloves, he would have never.
That's true.
Yeah. See, like, all I'm saying is, like, he almost fell into their, like, down to their level, but was a good enough guy at the end of the day, and it's perhaps, like, by random
suicide was
by also random.
Yeah, he thought there was a dead woman in his bed.
By other happenstance circumstance, he like sort of pulled himself back from it. So I'm giving both protagonists and antagonists a strong one on all fronts because of like because of the breadth that they were able to cover and represent, and specifically antagonists, both again abstract and as personified by the cadre of abusers, if you will, and as Jack Lemmon as CC, because he's very nuanced. Like he, again, set up as the nerdy little insurance guy, but then rounded out and had a great arc and had the closure that character needed to have with all the trials that he faced on the leading up to it. So that's all I can say.
So I just have one last thing to say about protagonists, which is this is a perfect storm of Shirley MacLaine and the script coming together to make Fran the best, the queen of sarcastic callbacks.
Yes.
Oh, this movie's all about callbacks. It's so good.
It's probably a little dialogue, but you're right. I'm sorry. I forgot to address that one thing. I do agree with you, E, that we should call Fran and CC both protagonists for sure, because we follow their story. We see their perspective throughout and get everything out of their overall journey.
You see, they got me. I did not think that Fran was gonna have as much focus as she did in this movie.
Yeah,
and even that's sort of subversion in a sense. Like you wouldn't expect that again.
As soon as she revealed that she was gonna, revealed. I mean, we knew,
sure,
because how much fucking movies we've seen,
but at the time,
at the time, it must have been a surprise. But
agreed.
As soon as she mentioned that she was going out to dinner with Sheldrake, the camera stayed as much on her, actually more so on her for a while than CC himself.
Yep. Yeah. You're right. I agree. So they absolutely share protagonist duties, and you're right. The portrayals by both actors were just top notch and completely believable, and just made sense enough that I have to give them both credit, and I agree with that assessment.
And the character of Fran is fascinating because at both she's an incredibly vulnerable woman. I mean, she's emotionally pushed to suicide, but also she has these moments of just
she's
strength.
Just tough as nails.
And she has this kind of
before you even see her in the elevator, she's already chopped off all of her hair specifically to spite Sheldrake.
You're right,
and to give herself a new beginning.
That's also sort of like a setup thing. Absolutely. So
love that.
I don't know. This is. From what I understand, a lot of people hated this because of its portrayal of adultery. There's a big controversy.
Yeah, but fuck them.
But I think that
there was
that the strength of the women as they portrayed, especially as applied by Fran, did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah. Double ones to both.
Completely agree.
Goddamn self.
I think it's double ones all around, and tag protag all ones.
Yep.
Yep, so that brings us to Steve-O with supporting.
Yes, it does. The supporting characters in this movie all did a good job. This is one of the weaker points of the movie, I think.
Really?
And not by bent.
Dirt.
Nope. But I think it's bent. No, it's dent. Doesn't matter. Doesn't fucking matter. Let's move on. Not because
not due to
that they were bad per se, but because this movie is very strong in all their parts.
In other areas. Yeah,
and
sure.
There were very good supporting characters. There was actually Sheldrake was really. Oh no, he was the antagonist.
His other cadre, though, I think would count. His lower minions.
The four other guys,
exactly. Yeah.
were fine. They did a fine job.
I know who my favorite is.
Oh, certainly.
Go on.
Do I know? Do I know who your favorite is?
You probably do. But
all right. I'm not gonna. guess. I'm not guessing, okay? I'm not guessing.
Is it Dr. Dreyfus?
He's a close second.
The Doc is very good. The
and
Doc,
his wife is awesome.
the Doc actually does a really good job. His wife does a very good job. They're all very bit part. Every supporting character. The Doc is not bit part. His wife is bit part.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Doc actually is probably the strongest supporting character in this movie,
Certainly.
perhaps other than the secretary,
Mm.
who also has a very important part to play.
And in the spirit of this movie, she's not the secretary. Her name is Miss Olsen.
Miss Olsen. Yeah.
Who
Thank
is
you.
my favorite
Thank you. I
supporting
did not
character.
remember her name, and
I gotcha.
and perhaps that was
I just felt to be
that is
less sexist ourselves.
That is my bad.
Sure.
Miss Olsen
But I do agree, she was a great character.
did a very good job of being the. So at first she was like the jilted lover, and then she kind of like, well,
No, sorry, I'm laughing at my own thoughts.
I'm sorry.
Go on.
But she was kind of the jilted lover first, and then she kind of like grew into her own
She had
part
her own
in this
arc
movie.
unto herself. Yeah.
Or at least actually no. At second, she was the jilted lover. At first, she was the secretary, who-
Like the busybody secretary.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sure.
And it kind of like you kind of understood why that was the case, and then it was because she was the jilted lover.
There's more fleshed
And
out.
then even after that, she kind of became like a person unto herself, I would say, to some extent. Anyway, the supporting characters in this were good enough to get a 1. Like I say, I think they're probably the weakest of all
Steven,
8 of these.
You forgot perhaps the most important supporting character
Oh, God.
in this entire movie.
Who is?
Rickshaw Boy.
Please, for the love of God. I was hoping no one would mention Rickshaw Boy.
I was going to mention
This movie gets pretty racist at points.
just for one specific thing, but
no,
There was more than
hold on.
there was more than one specific thing.
I think Rich has something to
You're
say
right.
about that. But it is more
you
than
guys are
one
so
point.
hung up on the Rickshaw Boy thing, which I'm not saying it's
I'm
not
not
racist.
hung up on that.
I'm
I know,
hung up on
they
that.
are though.
Listen,
Anyway,
Rich actually mentioned while we were watching the movie the point that he's hung up on that I'm sure he's going to
which
mention.
is completely legitimate as well.
and it's all kind of bullshit. But it's all 60s bullshit. To me, like it's very fucked up that was never recognized before now, but it wasn't, and that was what this movie was. I'm trying to look at it outside of that shit, and the supporting characters.
We'll talk more about that in style.
Yes,
That's what I was waiting for as well. If you're going to bring that up at all, but go on, Steve-O.
the supporting characters who were allowed a part in this movie, I suppose, who were allowed to play a decent part in this movie, were decent enough to give it a 1.
All right, so I don't have much to say. I will agree that, yeah, relatively,
Specifically,
supporting characters might be the, in quotes, weakest part, but I still think Dr. Dreyfus and many, like, the cadre of, like, under Mr. Sheldrick, like, the original, like, the 4 apartment users. But I'm going to bring up also, I think Sylvia was her name, the woman that CC met at the bar, if they were, as always
No,
point.
Mrs. McDougal.
Ms. McDougal, you're right, that's it. So, like, I thought she, like, while again, she wasn't there all that much, but I think she's filled an important role and did a good job with the little that she had.
and her husband, the jockey.
Who's
Is the
jockey
little-
husband?
I was gonna say, it's the little
The Cuban jockey husband off screen, sure, I guess, but
I think
He
you
wasn't
know what?
actually
You know what?
moving.
She gets a 1 just for her first line being. So, what do you think about Castro?
no, she's
That was so weird.
Yeah.
I think that's why they called it avant-garde. So Ian mentioned a review of this, I believe, that said it was avant-garde, which I didn't see it as at all. But I think that there were a couple points where I was like, what the fuck is this weird shit? And I think that's possibly why it's called avant-garde.
I guess I could see it being described as such at the time. I would never describe it as such now. But all I'm saying is I'm going to give supporting a 1 regardless. Yes, maybe not as strong as of a 1 as the other topics we just addressed. But nevertheless, I think it all was well rounded out. And regardless of how little or much screen time the other supporting cast had, I think they did a good job with what they did have. And
Come back to me.
The script gave them enough to do. So
you guys go. Come back to me at the end of this.
I'm done.
You're done.
I'm done too.
Supporting.
Mm-hmm.
Rich, you got anything to say about supporting?
I
heard that you had something to say.
Oh, no, save that for style.
Yeah, I think we're gonna talk about this stuff.
I think Miss Olsen was definitely my favorite. I loved her arc, along with I loved her arc more so than Dr. Dreyfus's, simply because she.
I mean, Dr. Dreyfus is partying with brain surgeons and proctologists and
a few nurses.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
I'm still giving it a solid.
He was definitely clutch. He also had some leaning on the story besides the part that he played helping out Fran.
So much Yiddish advice.
Yes, a lot of Yiddish advice, and actually gave the protagonist that kick in the ass that he needed.
Yeah, like a mental,
to become the better person.
A mental slap in the face. Yeah,
I was a very
actually. I think he shared that with his wife because, like she said, she's like,
yeah,
he keeps no secrets from me.
That's true.
You're basically an asshole.
Yeah.
You're a terrible person for what you did to this girl.
Yeah.
I was very close to giving this a 0, but I'm going to give it a 1 on the strength of the Doctor. And I think that's it. Like, the rest of the characters were fine, but they weren't.
No, I agree with Miss Olsen
as good
as well.
Miss Olsen was good. I agree, but like, if it was just her, I think I would give this a 0.
Sure.
But regardless, it's going to get a 1. I'm starting at the Doctor and like his nursing Fran through her overdose and all that stuff. So we'll go with that.
All right. One's all around.
Oh yeah, 1.
So one's all around.
Yeah. Scott, you're up with the dialogue.
All right. Yeah, man. This is probably this and themes may be the easiest and strongest points of the movie to give a 1 to because it was spot on. And again, we were somewhat surprised, be like, damn, I can't believe this movie for this time had that line, had all the callbacks it did, and just like, it's sort of the dialogue, if not, I don't want to say like hit you on the nose. It definitely wasn't like an anvil to you at any point about like what it wanted to impart, but it was just like sharp enough that like, yeah, like that character should have said that, like, wow, like what a like knife to the emotional core to as a callback, like Fran and Sheldrick's interactions when
Fran's tongue was like the most dangerous weapon in this entire movie. Yeah,
she was cutting people with her words, and like rightfully so, I think, for almost all of it, if not all of it. And even like, and finally, when CC confronted Sheldrick and like confronted again the other little cadre, all that stuff, and just all of it, I thought was sort of like surprisingly beyond its time, surprisingly prescient, I guess, as we said earlier. Yeah, I can't give it enough. Like, it was just spot on. Like, great script writing. Every character, I believed every goddamn word they were saying, and especially for the tense situations, just the general situations, and like overall the circumstances that they were in. I think it was, again, visionary for what it is, and still stands. And I have to give all credit where credit is due on the dialogue front, and that's pretty much all I have to say about it.
There's one scene in particular I want to discuss, which I think was really good. It was right towards the end when Fran is about to leave the boss, whose name I keep forgetting.
Sheldrick.
And when she realizes, when she gets everything, he's been kicked out by his wife. He finally has her, and she has him. And having a conversation, she realizes this is not what she wants. Now that she has it. And she begins to have a conversation. Yeah, they're talking to each other, but she's talking to herself.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, having a discussion with Baxter, who's not there. She's making callbacks to their previous conversations. Yep. You're watching through the dialogue and through Shirley MacLaine's performance, her come to the realization that she doesn't want to be with the boss. She wants to be with Baxter. And I thought that was a very well acted and well constructed and scripted scene. And I mean, that holds true throughout.
I agree. You're right. That's a good exemplary one, and you can apply that to the entire movie, and that's my logic for a 1 as well.
So I'm not going to go too deep into how much I love the dialogue. I think it was great. I'll just say that. But what I really want to call attention to is how tight this script is. It is a call and response script to a T. There is, as we went through the last 15 minutes of this, I want to say, I kept saying, that's a reference to early in the movie.
Yep.
That's a reference to early
the
in the movie.
callbacks were getting
that's
more
a callback.
And more. Yeah.
That's a callback. That's a callback. That's a callback. And it just was nonstop
Up until the last
paying
3
off.
minutes.
Yeah, it was just paying off things that happened earlier in the script nonstop throughout the last 15 minutes of the movie, I want to say. And it's in a way that you don't see very often even today.
Agreed.
In scripts.
Ahead of its time, man.
This script, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's a time. We keep saying that, and you're right. I think it was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's a time thing. I think it's just when you write a tight script, when you write something that's as
solidly grounded,
I guess, well written as this. I don't want to say it that way because it sounds shitty. I should have written that line better.
It got best screenplay for a reason.
But exactly. When you write this type of script, you can see why people enjoy it. It's because you set something up, you pay it off. You set something up, you pay it off. And they had so many setups and payoffs throughout this entire script. It was almost unbelievable. Mm-hmm. By the end, I kept saying, that's a callback. That's a callback. That's a callback. That's a callback. And all of these callbacks were closing off a certain aspect of the script, a certain aspect of the story. And it was, it just felt so good while that was happening. As somebody who has tried to write and failed mostly.
Certainly.
And you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do. That's why I said certainly.
It just feels so good to see something executed in that way.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
And I have to give dialogue a super strong one.
Yep.
And in a way that I don't do very often, I want to go kind of beyond dialogue and give credit to the script itself. As opposed to the dialogue, I want to talk to the pacing, the script, everything that went into writing the script of this. I want to give that a 1.
It's almost a shock that the two people who wrote this also wrote Some Like It Hot.
It's a very weird juxtaposition, absolutely. But I think what you said, Steve-O,
it makes me want to go back and watch Some Like It Hot and try to view it in another light.
Doesn't make me want to do that.
Strangely enough.
But I do agree that maybe it crosses over to the next question, but the script as a whole and the dialogue specifically deserve a very strong 1.
Yeah.
Which I'm giving it.
I'm giving it a 1 as well.
Okay. So we all give it impassioned Steve-O 1?
Yeah. Pretty much.
So it brings me to
style, I believe, yeah.
So I love the style of this movie a lot. I mean, I know throughout the entire movie, we're oh, it should go this way, and then it did. And it's oh, it should definitely go this way, and then it did. And this thing wasn't romanticized. This is not a romanticized situation. There were a lot of misunderstandings and low blows and sad surprises. I mean, they got something okay at the end. It wasn't necessarily a happy ending. I mean, it was just them seeing
happy enough for what
happy enough.
Had come before.
It was it was definitely an uncertain future. He had all this stuff packed up. Yeah. I mean, they both, as they said at the end, had nothing.
Yeah.
He'd just given up his job. Fran had given up her dream of being with Sheldrake. And they just let's just see what happens.
Motherfucker.
I was going to follow up with that because that's kind of what I thought of as it was happening too. I was waiting to say it, but you're right. And I'll just add on that I agree with all of that, and the shots, as we were pointing out, and some of the framing as well. I'll leave some of that for you, Steve-O, but just
the mirror scene.
Yeah,
when he's looking through the broken mirror.
Yeah. It was it was almost noir, and you can say this of some of the other shots too. Kind of noirish, even though this is a in quotes noir film.
Well, the soundtrack was totally noir as well.
I was going to leave that for you guys, but you're right. I absolutely agree with that. It was. So it added a lot to it. It added like a lot of depth to like what otherwise could have been like less impactful scenes, I guess I'll say. But regardless, again, the cinematography, just the framing and the competency of directing in general as applied to the actual style, I think, again, all these elements added to elevate this film beyond what we expected and what thought was going to happen. And then when we were like, oh, they should, like you said, Rich, the plot should do this. The characters should cut to this. And like, this is never going to happen. Like, oh shit, they did it. Credit upon you. Like, yeah, damn good job. So again, I'm giving a very solid 1 on all those fronts, and I'll leave all the other things that we missed for you guys.
Not only that, I think that you're right that the plot that we as like savvy movie watchers, like film goers, said, yes, I think that this plot should go this way, and it did, and we're like, oh, I expected this film to go a whole other sappy way. That happened a lot. Not only did that happen, but on top of that, a lot of times, and this is the first time I've seen this movie, a lot of times I was like, oh, I think that it's going to go this way, and it didn't exactly do that, which was really surprising to me that I didn't see where they were coming from, because of the fact that not only is this,
like I think you could predict where it's going to go.
Yeah, well, not only is this a movie from 1960, right? So it's however many years old, 70 years old, or 70? What? However many? 50?
57.
57, 60 years old, whatever the hell it is. Not only is it 57 years old at this point, but it is one of the bigger movies of the era that it came out in. And so many movies have played off of it. So the tropes should be very obvious by now. But somehow,
and sort of were, but nevertheless, yeah, go on.
A lot in a lot of ways it was obvious, but in a lot of ways it wasn't, and that's what made this film like really refreshing to me. Was like I didn't really realize where it was going to go sometimes, and which was surprising because you would think, hey, this is a movie that a ton of people watch and a ton of people love, and this was a part of where movies have come from since then, and that's why this movie is why I realized that X is going to happen in certain movies or whatever. Like there's so many tendrils that come out of this movie that make the movies of today what they are.
I see what you mean.
Yep. I'm sorry, Ian. I know you're jonesing to say something. Please.
I want to build off of what you said.
Yeah.
The thing is, in a way, they play everything straight. They play everything logically correct for what a character would do in a movie such as this, or in a situation such as this. And that's what makes it surprising, is that it doesn't take any cheap exits for things.
Yes.
Bad people do bad things, and
repercussions happen.
Repercussions happen, but sometimes they don't, or sometimes they don't happen as strongly as we want them to happen.
Yeah.
So I came in wondering how this movie was advertised, because knowing that just the previous year to this movie coming out, Some Like It Hot was his thing. That was a straight
from
comedy.
the director of Some Like It Hot comes a new rom-com.
That's exactly how they.
That's how they played it. Yeah, as a rom-com.
Jack
that was what the trailer was.
They showed him making the pasta on the tennis racket, which is a Jack Lemmon scene
out of context, though. Yeah,
but it's the thing is,
you're right.
And if you see that in a trailer, you'll be like, "Oh, this is funny." But
it's a very
really
sweetheart scene, right?
It's
like
really
in
not
the movie.
funny. When
it's sort of bittersweet.
It's bitter, yeah. It's totally bittersweet on this, and this is. I like my dark comedies. This isn't a very bad things dark comedy. This isn't like a violent one. This is just a like heartbreak happens. We're laughing with you as characters going through sharing our pain.
Character piece almost.
Yeah, and it's Oddly enough, I forget the name of this, but there's actually what's the guy from American Pie?
Jason Biggs.
Jason Biggs. He made a movie that right after American Pie, which was sort of like
Loser.
this. Loser, yes. Where this student is going and and the professor is sleeping with the woman he likes. It's a very similar kind of thing. But if you went and say, "Oh, Jason Biggs, like American Pie," like that movie was nothing, and this is nothing.
Sure.
This is not a comedy. There's comedic elements to this, but it's like, and that's what's interesting. I could see why some people dislike this, but style-wise, for what they were trying to do, they pulled off. Perfect.
Fucking nailed
They
it.
did.
So yeah.
And one last small thing. Soundtrack, awesome. Sound design, terrific.
Actually, the theme was on the top Billboard hits for a while.
Yeah, I mean,
I believe it.
I can
it
see
was
that.
awesome. It was phenomenal.
It matched it melded so well to what they were trying to do, and for
Memorable.
The effect, for the effect they
Memorable
wanted to achieve.
in the way that many recent films. I feel like I've been letting people down
Sure.
in recent reviews, but like memorable in the way that many recent films that we watched have not been.
Some guy named Adolf made the music to this. I believe.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, regardless,
he was great.
Sort of the icing on the cake.
As long as it wasn't Hitler.
It wasn't. But sort of the icing on the cake, like everything we just said, and soundtrack capped it all off. So
Yeah.
giving it a fucking strong one.
Absolutely.
On
One's-
style.
One's all around.
Ooh, I think I know where we're going to score
Well,
this one.
yeah.
So
What's
that
left?
brings us to Ian with recommendation.
Yes, I basically just gave my recommendation and to stop more non sequiturs. I very strongly recommend this work. I think,
Yeah, absolutely. Watch The Apartment. It's this being the first time I saw it. I've been hearing about this movie for years, and I know that that's not the case for everyone. Based on just polling people that I was with tonight, this is not necessarily a well-known movie, but it is one that should be well-known. It's a very good movie, and perhaps the best Jack Lemmon movie that I've ever seen.
Except for
Perhaps including Glengarry Glen Ross.
Whoa.
Although I don't know about that. Glengarry Glen Ross is really
that's pretty
good
bold,
movie.
my friend.
But Jack Lemmon. This is Jack Lemmon's best role. Maybe we'll say that instead of.
All right.
But
We'll go with that.
This is an incredible movie. Check it out. It's darkly comic. I think we would all agree with, and but not in it is darkly comic and not comically dark. Right? It's not like a comedy first and dark second.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a look at what's behind the curtain in everybody's kind of social panorama, I would say, and like maybe not everybody has a sex dungeon that they're renting out to their coworkers, but don't we all have some kind of sex dungeon?
But we all hate someone for sleeping with the woman we love.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Sure. I'll say two things. But if you want to rent a sex dungeon, the studio is available. Secondly,
no, it's not.
Secondly, I'm going to obviously recommend it. That just to sort of build off what you said, I was completely unfamiliar with this film. I never heard of it. Like I didn't know what it was. We sort of quick backstory. We chose it because it vaguely centers around Christmas. Some of the plot happens around Christmas. Like, oh yeah, let's do a Christmas AFI movie. It'll be lighthearted or whatever.
Oh yeah, Merry Christmas, by the way.
Sure, and a happy new affair. But all I'm saying is I'm absolutely going having seen this film. Damn, yeah, it was extremely well done, well put together, and again has so much to say and whose messages are still pertinent right now, relevant, and get something out of it. And if you've never heard of it, definitely check it out. I think it should be. I guess my biggest recommendation was I think it should be higher up than in an 80 on the fucking list.
Yeah.
You can we've definitely done other AFI films that are higher up than this that we're like, meh. So this one I think should be moved up whenever they readjust it. Yeah. Don't see Some Like It Hot. Do see this film, and you'll definitely get something out of it. I highly recommend The Apartment. and that's it for me.
Yeah, like Scott, I had no idea about this movie beforehand, and it surprised the hell out of me.
Mm-hmm.
One drawback.
Oh, yes.
We must put a... Yeah.
I've been waiting for this.
One drawback is his portrayal of minority characters.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it being 1959, 1960, I should be happy that
it wasn't worse than that.
It wasn't worse than that. And like the one, unlike the, because I had just given up hope that there were going to be like any colored faces in this movie at all, besides Rickshaw Boy and the rest of the patrons.
Unfortunate Asian pianist.
Yeah. But like to have the I think that kind of squares Sheldrake away as the antagonist for me. To have him be getting his shoes shined.
He was like Mr. Potter, I guess.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, right. Like, there's almost no reason to have that. There was no reason to like have that exact thing happen, except to be like I guess a sign of the times in quotes.
I guess to show his power, maybe.
Sure.
But like the only saving grace was like
see much of an asshole
he flipped that dime up to the guy, and just like obliged.
Yeah.
Like a fuck you. Like, yeah, I'll take this money. Whatever, man.
Now. Yeah.
The other guy got a sweet bowler hat.
Yeah, he got a free sweet bowler hat.
But you're right, Rich. Like, it's unfortunate. Like, it's just like, I guess, like the innate racism of the times, and it wasn't cool that it was there, but it was.
But I'll still recommend this movie.
Yeah.
All right. That was going to be my question.
Fair enough.
Recommend or no? I was gonna say
there wasn't enough of that to take the one away.
Sure.
That being said, real quick question. Do you actually think it deserves a 10?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
What's interesting, yes, for right now, because I just saw the movie, like, however long.
See how it sits with you, though?
So, but I definitely was impressed by it. I mentioned this earlier, that I'm not judging this as a 10 based on the 1960s work. I'm judging this as a 10 based on now, because I think it's a very, like, modern movie in a lot of senses. And, I think as Scott was the one who said, if you watch it, you'll get something out of it now. And I think a lot of movies try to pull off what this did. Very few movies succeed in doing it.
Absolutely agree. That's why I think it's a 10, Steve-O.
On our scale, I think it's definitely a 10. Honestly, if I'm looking at this movie, I'd probably give it a 9. If
arbitrarily.
If I'm looking at this movie and somebody says give it a 1 to 10, I don't give it a 10. I give it a 9. It's a very good movie. It's incredible for its time, and it's incredible for now. Honestly, I don't even know why I said that, to be honest, because I think it's an incredible movie for now. But there are a lot of other better movies, I think, out there. There are not that many movies that do what this movie did, which is what I give it the most credit for.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think it's a 9.
Okay.
If I'm being like super, if I'm digging super down into it, I would give it a 9.5. But I wouldn't give it a 10.
Okay.
I don't think it's a perfect movie. I think it's a very, very, very good movie.
See, here's the thing: to compare it to a movie quickly that we just saw, Lady Bird, which we all gave a 10 to. We all agreed that it's a 10 movie. It captured. Here's the thing: I loved Lady Bird because it dealt with very real emotions and very real situations.
Okay.
This movie did as well. There was nothing like
cheap
unbelievable or
cheap
about this.
I completely agree with that.
And I could see that, and that's why I'm a big fan of that kind of real emotion. I can find a movie that pulls at my heartstrings far more by going into much not things that aren't average situations. This felt very real, and that's why it has that impact.
I completely agree with that. I just think it had a couple little things that were not and honestly, I'm not trying to dock this movie. Well, actually, I am trying to dock this movie, I guess, right now.
Trying to dock our time.
You're right. I'm sorry. I don't want to go into this too much more, but I think that it is not quite a perfect movie.
And we'll leave it at that.
And we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. That's it.
Yes. You still give it a 10 on the Mott scale, and that's kind of all that
I give it a
matters.
10 on our scale. I think it's a 9.5.
You're justifying yourself like the boss character.
I think it's a
Yeah.
9.5.
The more you talk, the more...
Oh, go fuck yourself.
All right,
Cut it off there. Cut it off there. Let Fred say go fuck yourself.
Anyway.
So, Ian, I know you had a hard time adding up our aggregate score.
10, 10, 10, 10, 10.
10.
I think that stands.
Perfect 10.
Cheers.
Anybody got anything else to add?
Nope. I've already added enough.
Said my piece.
I agree. So thank you for joining us for MOTSterpiece Theater. I've been Rich Perry. It's been Jonathan Manzer.
Good night.
Steve Hermosi.
Cheers.
Scott Thurlow.
And I treat all women with respect always. Good night.
We hope you've enjoyed your stay.
MOTSterpiece Theater.
Join us again next time, won't you?
MOTSterpiece Theater.
Editing and engineering by Jonathan Ian Manser. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.
MOTSterpiece Theater. MOTSterpiece